Hey guys, it's week 231, and this week we are talking about regional magic. As someone who practices something considered regional magic, it's going to be an interesting topic this week. So, in the United States, there's lots of subdivides of different types of regional magic. Like Drew touched on, there's the Appalachian Granny Magic, as I was taught, and then you have the Pacific Northwest. And then you have desert, so you have Arizona, New Mexico, stuff that's regional to that. And then down when you get into like New Orleans and places like that, you have a combination of different Caribbean things that have come in: voodoo, hoodoo, Santeria, things like that. And those aren't necessarily regional per se, but I find that they're in higher concentrations because of the different immigration patterns. As someone who lives in the Midwest, we have a lot of native stuff where I live currently. I live not too far from what used to be Wyandotte land currently. And before that, I lived really close to what used to be Cree land. So there's a lot of that plays into my practice. And then as I move to the south, coming up this late fall, early winter, there's a lot of other things that play into that. There's a lot of older Dutch traditions and Scottish traditions that are coming into play with that, and a little bit of French. So for me, I've always tried to keep, well, no, that's not true. In the past several years, I've tried to keep my practice very much regional. I'm trying to be more grain as far as not using trucking lines to ship in things. I used to use an echinette route, which turns things red quite frequently, and I shipped it from the Pacific Northwest. However, in the last few years, I've tried really hard to use cedar, which is pretty prevalent around here, oak, which is also pretty prevalent, sycamore, which is also pretty thick here. And then when I move south, it'll be a lot of cedar, it'll be a lot of pine. I'm learning, as someone who uses herbs pretty extensively, I'm learning that even though I'm only moving about 350 miles, there's a lot of differences in what naturally grows in those areas. So that's still a learning curve for me. But as I am someone who studies a lot of history, I find that there's a lot of different regional magics. And even in Italy, there are two very prevalent regional magics. In Spain, Portugal, Romania, Moldova. They're all very centered. And then when you get into the Black Forest, there's a lot of folklore and things like that that kind of pass on oral tradition. So I always find it interesting to kind of talk to different people who are using regional magic or tribal magic, and how that differs from space to space. I think there are a lot of similarities between the different sections, but I think the small nuances of the intentions and what ceremoniously different things mean is always really interesting to see the output of how that magic flourishes. So there's my small tidbit of regional magic. Without going into specifics, I think as a lot of people here are solitary, and we're primarily just speaking to solitary practitioners, I think each person, even within the same region, has their own personal practice, and I think that's going to vary from person to person. Even if you practice the same vein of the same regional magic, some people are more okay with using what's around you, and other people want to use things that would have come over with the immigrants that settled that area and what would have been used in antiquity. So I always think it's interesting the variations within the strands of regional magic. So let me know in the comments below whether or not you guys practice regional magic, or what variation of regional magic you find interesting, or if it's not something that calls to you. And I will talk to you guys next week when we dive into the next topic here on Starting Out Solitary.